From FingerLakes1.com and presented by FL1 Radio, I'm Josh Durso, and this is Inside the FLX. Our program today begins last fall when Geneva City Council learned about a proposal that would build a solar community, which would be the first of its kind in the region. Now, that multi-million-dollar project is moving forward and is being led by Ryan Wallace of the Geneva-based Small Grid. He's our guest this hour to talk about the project and walk us through what these solar communities are all about. Ryan, thanks a lot for being here today.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So give us some of the background, the basics of what got you involved in this kind of business. Obviously, your roots are not in this business, but interesting story.
Well, it's like a lot of people, I think, I've had different paths in my career, but really this starts back when I was 15. We had a family cabin in Grants, New Mexico, which is about as far as you can get from civilization and still be in the United States. We're about 50 miles from the closest town. And we had a cabin there, and my family built the cabin, and at 15, I helped put in our first solar array to make that cabin off-grid. And I just thought it was the most miraculous thing. You know, you're sitting here, nothing's connected to this building, and you've got air conditioning and refrigerator and even a television. And so fast forward to 2005, I started a company called Willow Homes that my mother and I ran. We renovated old Victorian homes and in New Mexico. And when the housing crisis hit, we stopped doing the homes, but we kept on doing the solar. And so, but it's always been in our blood. So when we had an opportunity to, I found a company called Quick Solar, and we installed over 400 solar arrays throughout the Finger Lakes. But the issue was that we weren't addressing the biggest problem. The biggest problem we kept running into was that the homes themselves were the problem. You know, homes that didn't have adequate insulation, poor windows, were a lot of maintenance. And so that's what led us to actually wanting to build the homes themselves.
So walk us through what is Small Grid as far as the company goes.
Yeah. So Small Grid started out as looking to retrofit existing homes with solar and heat pump technology, basically make them self-reliant. The company is now kind of branching out to create a new entity called the Solar Home Factory. And really that's kind of recognition that while you can definitely retrofit your home, it's a lot easier to kind of start from the ground up. And so the Solar Home Factory is actually going to be a factory over on 33 Forge Avenue that will actually build these homes modularly, that's a mouthful, from the ground up. And then we'll transport them to the site and put them on permanent foundation, and they'll kind of be baked in with all the systems that we created at Small Grid, will be kind of baked into the home at the factory.
Now, that's, for those who might be listening, that sounds like a big deal. You have a company, a local company who's planting roots, building a facility that will build homes that will obviously be placed back into the community. Talk about the economic development side of it and what you feel this means or can mean for the region propelling forward over the next several years.
Well, I have to start first giving credit where credit's due, and that's with the team at City Hall, starting originally with Matt Horn and now Sage Gerling, Adam Blowers, Doris Myers over in Geneva. What they've done is they've created a scenario where it's very clear to businesses like ours that it's a friendly place to start a business, and they're going to help you develop. And that's exactly what they did. And so our vision is to kind of use the bedrock that they provided us to build eventually a 30,000 square foot manufacturing facility that would employ over 100 people, and these are permanent union jobs. I just believe so strongly that there's so much opportunity in this region to you look at all these old homes, and some are beautiful and historic, And others are less beautiful and less historic, but still cost their owners a ton of money to operate. I think there's an opportunity when the home is not historic to actually look at replacing some of these homes with new structures. Recycle as much material out of the old structures as possible, build a new structure, build it in a factory, in a controlled environment, and then install it on site. And that does two things. It dramatically reduces the cost of ownership for people living in these homes. They have no heating bill, no electric bill. And then it does a second thing, is it creates every home we build creates a phenomenal new job in Geneva. And and our goal is to pay our people a wage where they can actually afford the homes that they're building. Mm-hmm. And then we get into the circular economy where we've got our employees buying our own homes. They're living where they're working. And that's really important to me because selfishly, I want a beautiful, vibrant city to live in. Mm-hmm. And so we could save some money by cutting corners on labor and not paying people well. But I don't think that'll grow the economic base that will then support the type of homes, type of product that we want to sell.
Right. Now, when you talk about the actual manufacturing portion of this, what is the timeline for somebody who might be sitting on the outside saying, I wonder how long that takes? What does the typical turnaround time look like to build one of these modular structures you're talking about?
So once we're ramped up, and it'll take a little time to ramp up. Right. We've just got the building coming out of the ground right now. Once we're ramped up, we should be able to produce a home a week. Mm-hmm. And that's not just walls and the base, but it's actually the entire home. I mean, our homes will ship to the site with appliances installed, flooring, all your fixtures. I mean, even we put toilet paper on the toilet paper roll holders. I mean, right. It's a home that's ready to go. And then we prep the site ahead of time. We build the foundation, put in the utilities, and theoretically, you could drop that home on site and that evening have it all connected and have a certificate of occupancy. So it could go very quickly once we ramp up.
Is this the next revolution in housing and how housing sort of works? Is this the logical next step, especially in terms of how quickly it can sort of turn around and be right there in front of you?
There's this guy out in Nebraska, is Warren Buffett. He tends to think so. So he's one of the largest investors in modular housing. In Europe, this model has been really proven and is just being accelerated rapidly. There's a new facility in England that'll produce 100 homes a day, and it's their solution to exactly the problem that they're having, which is not too different from ours, which is you've got an aging population that can't live in two-story homes, and they need to build newer one-story homes. So I absolutely believe it's the future.
Now, there might be a few people listening and saying, well, wait a second, solar, New York, what? No. and obviously we've seen it. We've seen the rise of solar, and yep. Yes, it's possible. But for those who might not be following solar and how it's evolved over the years, explain why this is completely possible and doable, even in gray, sometimes miserable New York.
Well, as you've seen the past few days, we do get some sun, and the key here is that in all of these homes, they're still connected to the grid, and so between the grid and battery technology, which is getting cheaper and cheaper every day, you can collect that energy during the very, very sunny months and use that credit in the winter. Mm-hmm. Although what I'll tell you is, even though you kind of instinctually think of New York as kind of this gray place in the winter, what we've seen over the past 10 years is a shift to less constant gray in the winter and more of like severe weather followed by sunshine.
Right.
And And that's been fascinating to watch, and we can actually see it in real time. We monitor those 400 solar arrays we put in. We can actually see that data, and it absolutely is this kind of crazy roller coaster of weather in the winter. So we're actually getting more out of the winter than we're used to. But overall, we really don't even need the sunlight in the winter. So we have that credit built up from the summer.
So what you're saying is even when it's like 0 degrees outside and the sun is shining, that's still just as good as...
Yeah, if you really want to get geeky with it, for a moment. Solar cells are semiconductors, so the colder they are, the happier they are. A friend of mine was responsible for managing the solar panels at a U.S. Army base or a U.S. military base in Antarctica, and he took a 120 watt panel, I believe, down there, and it was something crazy, -40 Fahrenheit, and this 120 watt panel was producing 180 watts of energy just because it was so cold and working at such high efficiency. So actually, that cold, really sunny days, we get these real pops of energy.
That's really interesting.
But overall, it's still our production is kind of the tortoise. It's the low and slow that wins the race. So even though those pops of energy are fun, it's really May, June, July, August that we collect our energy.
So you mentioned battery technology and the improvement of battery technology. Yeah. I do want to jump into that a little more because I think we've seen it passively over the last 10 or so years in personal devices, cell phones, things like that, where battery tech has gotten better. But this is particularly useful on the renewable energy side as well. Yep. Walk us through that. So
battery technology is where solar modules were 10 years ago. So to just kind of give you a lay of the ground, when I started putting in solar, professionally, a solar panel cost $2,000. I can buy that same solar panel today for $180. And that's where battery technology is at right now, to where it just keeps dropping precipitously every year. And right now, you can still use some traditional battery technology, but lithium, various forms of lithium are making a big movement. Now, I do think that in another 3 or 4 years, we'll see that price drop even further to where you start seeing it integrated even more. But right now, the low-hanging fruit is things where weight is a consideration. So like vehicles, cell phones, that's where the biggest gains are being made. What'll be really exciting is when you can get shipping container-sized batteries at a reasonable price. Because now you can take, we built a solar farm over on Carter Road in Geneva by the high school, and you start matching that up with huge industrial-sized batteries. Well, now during a grid outage, we could power the hospital, the high school, middle school, and that'll be the next step, and you'll start seeing more and more of that over the next 5 years.
Now, walk us through what this project, this specific project in Geneva, what you guys are working on, will look like when it all comes together and when it's actually built. Where, what, how, etc.
So this is the first of what we hope will be many solar villages. The Lake Tunnel Solar Village is located at 68 Elizabeth Blackwell. That's basically right where 5 and 20 comes through Geneva, kind of goes along the lake and starts coming up the hill to the western part of town. It's an area on the west side of the road, and there's actually an existing tunnel that goes underneath 5 and 20 connecting it to the lake, and that's how it got its name. What it's really neat is we kind of designed this to embrace the public access part of it. So we're improving the pathway to the tunnel, and we're building townhomes on each side of it, and it's meant to feel kind of like an Italian villa. Front porches, balconies facing each other, close in on the pathway, and those units, most of the people who've purchased those are going to use those as vacation rental. Right. There are then 4 larger buildings behind those townhomes, and those are the condo buildings. And we're hoping to get our state approval to start selling those this fall. And there's kind of a whole state condo approval process. And we have had just overwhelming demand for those. I mean, just people just literally, knocking on our door trying to get in. And I think what you're seeing is you're just seeing, again, that kind of demand for people who want to stay here in the Finger Lakes, want something that's lower maintenance. And then when you start talking about not having a heating bill or an electric bill, they get pretty excited. So what I'm so excited about it for Geneva is that it really will improve the connectivity to the lake in another way. I mean, they're doing the pedestrian improvements on 5 and 20 eventually. Hopefully we'll get the marina in, and this will be another pathway down to there. And then hopefully we can get that public beach figured out and keep it public. Because again, I think the more attractions we can have along the lake, more access we can have, the better.
So I want to ask, just piggybacking off of that, obviously a lot of activity, a lot of growth along the lake shores, Seneca Lake there. Not just your project, but all of the things that are happening. How important is that to Geneva continuing to be on that path of growth over the next 4, 5, 6 years, and then obviously propelling into the further future?
I think it's huge because there are, in my opinion, not too many cities in the Finger Lakes that are really grabbing the tourism bull by the horns. I think there's lots of cities trying, but there's limitations. And I think that Geneva has an opportunity with the restaurants and the wineries, and Linden Street and so on, that it can really, and now with the Finger Lakes Welcome Center, it could really kind of grab that unofficial capital of the tourism market there. For me, though, that's only part of the equation, because the tourism jobs are phenomenal, and they, people kind of downplay, tourism jobs are low-wage jobs. Well, I disagree. I think that you start working your way through the wineries and the production managers and the marketing people, and there's lots of ways to work your way up. And then you have all the people who support those people, the plumbers, the electricians, and so on, who are working on. And I think that second part, that supporting the tourism industry, is part of what we do, in that we want to get those people, those very talented, aggressive business owners, and make sure they're living right here. Give them phenomenal places to live. And I think what you'll see is that it won't just be about tourism then. I mean, if a company is looking to relocate, they say, gosh, there's all these things to do and there's great housing. I'm just going to relocate my business here, or I'm going to start my business here. So I feel like the housing part of it is still a key component to really finishing out the circle of the tourism jobs tail.
Now, as far as talk a little inside baseball here. You're in the industry. Do you see this as being sort of an opportunity to propel additional similar projects throughout the entire region? Do you guys sort of see yourselves as the first try at what this can really be, and how easy it can be to actually get going once you have the right pieces in place?
Well, I think that in terms of development, I think once our condo buildings go up, you'll see a push in Geneva and elsewhere. We're not the only condo development coming up. There's certainly ones in Canandaigua and Hammondsport, Penn Yan. But there's been a lot of kind of unintentional misinformation. When we first got into this, people said, condos are impossible. No one will let you do that. And it's not easy. There's a lot of legal work. There's a lot of money. But what's exciting about it is, especially in Geneva, it breaks this property tax dynamic, where in the past it's either you absolutely get hit over the head with property taxes, or you play some pilot game or some sort of nonprofit setup where you avoid the taxes completely. The condo setup actually, to me, is the best of both worlds, to where you're on the tax rolls, you're bringing revenue into the city, but it's at a reduced amount to where people will still buy the homes. It's going to be difficult to sell a $300,000 home in a high tax municipality. A $300,000 condo that's taxed at about $210,000 is much more reasonable.
Right.
And then hopefully, as you get more and more of that, enough tax revenue will come in that it starts lowering the tax rate. Mm-hmm. My only concern in that is I think that there are ways of doing that in a way that still preserves the lakefront. Mm-hmm. I think you have a severe uphill battle if you start messing with the lakefront, and I would actually be at the forefront of that.
Right.
But there's a lot of places around the lakefront that could accommodate this. So yes, I do hope that we're kind of the precursor to more of that. For our own company, I'd like to build 5 more solar villages over the next 5 years.
So I guess my one of my questions after hearing the different aspects of this project and solar industry as a whole, you mentioned this sort of the roadblock that exists, or maybe it only currently exists with some of the older homes, the more historic homes. Do you see, as the technology gets better, as the process sort of hones itself in, that there becomes an opportunity to help those old homes, those historic homes, become efficient to the extent that some of these new solar homes now are?
So it's difficult, but it's doable. Mm-hmm. And I would argue that it is only worth it in the historic homes. I mean, I go up Main Street, both South Main and North Main in Geneva, and I see these beautiful, truly historic brick homes, and it's absolutely worth it, and you can do that. And the way you do that is with a very intensive and well thought out retrofit. You replace the roof, you insulate, if you can, you actually add a second interior wall to the brick walls that you can then insulate. There's ways of doing it, and there's some great companies like Airtight Solutions out of Marion that will actually show you how to do that. I would argue, though, that there's a lot more homes which don't hit that kind of beautiful historic criteria. Mm-hmm. And honestly should be demolished. I mean, I hate to be that cavalier about it. I've lived in a lot of them. I love older homes, but Geneva has a lot of them. These homes that really don't have any architectural value, historical value, and are too big. They're 3,000 square feet, and so they get chopped up into apartments. And frankly, in that same lot, you could build. It's a zoning issue you have to figure out, but you could build 3 brand new, very efficient units in that same space, and you've actually increased the tax base. Mm-hmm. So now you've got 3 units appraised at $125,000 each. So I think if you have a nuance where that line is, whether it's worth saving or not, you can absolutely do that.
Is selling the efficiency aspect of it the most difficult part of talking about and selling these types of projects? Obviously, it's a big cost up front, or it seems like a big cost up front, but then it seems like it really balances itself out very quickly, especially when you compare it to the traditional homeowner situation.
Well, here's where I'm gonna plug ourselves a little bit. With the solar home factory, I can produce a 100% solar powered home for the same cost as traditional new construction. And that's because of the efficiencies of the factory. Right. All of my plumbers, electricians, carpenters, drywallers are all on staff. And so that gives us the opportunity. And by the way, I'm basically going to my previous subcontractors, and instead of saying, hey, I'm going to put you out of business, I say, come work for me.
Right.
And they look at it and they say, "Wait, I can work indoor in December, in a factory with a radiant heat floor. Sign me up." So I think the key is that we can do that differently, and we don't have to sell them on that upfront cost, and that's really the big game changer. So as we can ramp up, I can go out then and compete with a traditional home. Especially these big track home builders like Ryan Homes, and say, look, you can pay them $200,000, or you can pay me $200,000, and with my home, you don't have a heating bill. And that's really the game changer. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the only one doing it. There's other companies who figured that out too. but I believe we're the only ones in the Finger Lakes.
So what is next for the business? What's next? What is going to be the next thing that people see in the headlines? Will it be groundbreaking construction? Will it be the facility on Forge Ave? What's going to be the next thing that pops up for you guys?
The next thing that you're going to see is you're going to see the first housing modules come out of the pilot factory. So the pilot factory will be done the end of this month, and we'll start in the beginning of August with the first home modules. We're partnering with a company, a Clyde company called EPS, that builds these SIP walls. A SIP wall is it's basically OSB and then foam and then another sheet of OSB, but that's the structure of the home. And why that's important, and this gets a little inside baseball, a little geeky, but you don't have thermal bridging. So one of the problems with, like, say you mentioned retrofitting an old home, especially the brick home, but even traditional wood frame home, is that you can insulate all you want between the studs, but that cold transmits right through the stud. And so with a SIP wall, that doesn't happen. So we're really proud to be partnering with EPS to build these homes. You'll see that those first modules come out of the factory probably end of August. And then down at the site, you'll see a whole bunch of dirt moving around, and then magically one day in October, there's going to be finished homes there. I mean, it's just going to overnight have that transition. So.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming in, and I'm sure we'll be talking more as these projects sort of get off the ground and you guys really start moving forward, because it's really exciting stuff what you guys are doing up there.
Well, thanks. Again, we're excited to be part of a community that has embraced us. You know, my wife, monitors all our social media stuff, and you get one negative comment, and she gets a little concerned, and she's going to kill me after seeing this. But we'll have 230 positive comments, right, and one negative. And you know what? I'll take that any day. And so it really has been great to have the community support. We sincerely appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Ryan, our listeners, and, of course, FingerLakes1.com for making this podcast possible. You can catch Inside the FLX on Saturdays during the 10 o'clock hour on WDWN 89.1 FM in Auburn or 97.7 FM in Fulton. The program also airs Sundays and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum, channel 1304, and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay informed, Finger Lakes.